For years, there's been debate about the racial identity of the ancient Israelites. Some claim they were black in the way we understand blackness today, sub-Saharan African descent with African features. But is this historically accurate? Why does it matter? It matters because history and theology are not the same thing. Anyone can worship the God of Israel, but claiming a historical identity must be backed by evidence, not emotion. Being honest about biblical history actually strengthens our understanding and prevents us from building faith on shaky ground. For those who would believe blacks are the true Israelites because of Deuteronomy 28's curses. Deuteronomy 28 lists punishments Israel would face if they broke God's covenant. Some interpret these as aligning with the black experience, especially slavery. But those curses were specific to ancient Israel's disobedience and happened in their own time, exile, captivity under Assyria and Babylon, and Roman destruction in 70 CE. These don't prove ethnic identity, they fulfill covenant warnings. First, let's clarify something important. Ancient people didn't think in modern racial categories. Concepts like black and white are recent developments shaped by modern colonialism, slavery, and social constructs. Ancient identity was based more on tribe, culture, language, and region than skin tone. But for those who think white people stole the identity of the real Israelites, there's no historical evidence that Europeans ever needed or tried to claim ancient Israelite identity until much later in Christian history. Ancient Jews and Israelites were already well established in the Levant. The Israelites were a Semitic people, related ethnically, linguistically, and culturally to their neighbors in the ancient Near East, the Canaanites, Phoenicians, Arameans, Moabites, Edomites, and others. All of these groups spoke Semitic languages and lived in regions that are today part of Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and parts of northern Arabia. Genetic studies of modern Jewish populations and ancient Canaanite remains show strong continuity in the Levant region. That means the ancient Israelites shared common ancestry with other Near Eastern peoples, not sub-Saharan Africans. What about Egypt? Some argue the Israelites lived in Africa and therefore must have been African. It's true that ancient Egypt is in Africa, but the Egyptians themselves were a mix of North African and Near Eastern peoples, not sub-Saharan Africans. Artistic depictions from Egypt distinguish Egyptians, Nubians, Black Africans, and Semitic Asiatics like the Hebrews. The Hebrews are consistently shown with lighter brown skin, straight or wavy hair, and Semitic clothing styles, not the features associated with sub-Saharan Africans. The Bible itself gives clues to the Israelites' ethnic appearance. For example, when Joseph's brothers come to Egypt, the Egyptians don't immediately recognize them as foreigners. Moses passes as an Egyptian. That suggests cultural and physical similarity between Hebrews and Egyptians. But again, not necessarily Black African identity, since Egyptians were not considered Black in the modern sense. The prophet Jeremiah speaks of the skin of the Ethiopian being dark, highlighting that dark skin was seen as distinct and noteworthy. This implies that Israelites generally didn't share that level of pigmentation. There are also ancient Assyrian and Babylonian wall reliefs that show Israelite captives with Middle Eastern features, olive to light brown skin, bearded men with Semitic profiles. These match how modern Middle Eastern people often appear. So why do some claim the Israelites were Black? Partly because of the erasure of Africa in biblical narratives and the exclusion of Black people from traditional portrayals of biblical history. Some Black identity movements, especially in the Americas, reclaim Israelite identity as a way to restore dignity and spiritual identity in the face of centuries of oppression. While this may be empowering on a cultural or theological level, it's not supported by historical evidence. To be clear, there were Black people in the biblical world. Ethiopia, Cush, and Nubia played important roles. The Bible honors African figures like the Queen of Sheba, the Cushite army officer who saved Jeremiah, and the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts. But that doesn't mean the entire nation of Israel was Black. The ancient Israelites were Semitic people of the Near East. They were not sub-Saharan Africans and not Black in the way we define it today. This doesn't diminish anyone's spiritual connection to Scripture. But if we're going to talk about history, we should be honest about what the evidence shows. Black people don't need to be the original Israelites to be significant in God's story. Their legacy is already written in Scripture, in blood, in faith, and in spiritual authority. Let's examine what the evidence accurately says.